that which goes on in this universe, in this galaxy, and how are you related to it? Oh, I'll tell you this. I'll give you a hint. This planet is increasing in light. It really is. It may not look like it right now. It is. Other planets have gone through what you are going through. Decisions, light and dark. What you'll tolerate, what you won't. What you really want on the planet and what you don't. That's where you are. But I'll tell you, the light that you strike here, called planet Earth, is measurable in consciousness by other planets, by other groups of planets, some of whom are very aware of you and are waiting for you to join a consciousness group who also understands what's going on. What you do here, specifically in the next 100 years, will change that which is what we'll call the light quotient of the galaxy. The more planets that go into that which is awareness changes the galactic framework, if you want to say. I'm trying to give you words that don't make sense because the language of spirit is not human. But love is. All this to say, you're really important. All of you. What happens here, what happens to you, what happens next to you, and what happens eventually with those around you. Yes, I'm speaking of other planets. They've always been there. Do you really think that this is the only planet that developed life? Honestly, you really think that? When everywhere your scientists look in the galaxy, you have the same elements with the same processes. What are the chances in trillions of planets that one or two might have this happen? And the answer is it wasn't one or two. It was thousands have had this happen, called life. You always want to make them look strange and different and monstrous. What if most of them looked like you? Would that shock you? That the same process happened there as here, and it had a little push or a tweak like you did. That perhaps your DNA is not necessarily that of Earth. What if I told you that? That's getting a little too strange, perhaps. All in love. There is something else going on. It's big, and you're part of it. Can't you feel it? Old soul, can't you feel it? There are processes you have yet to discover that are wonderful and beautiful and will be seen, acknowledged, tested, and proven that have to do with your DNA. You have no clue. Medical experts, professionals, don't want to test the things that I'll tell you about. What if I told you that the energy of love and compassion affects your DNA? Your DNA, actually, the chemistry of your DNA has antennas on it. That's the best receptors on it. That's the best I can give you that you will understand, and that's not accurate. But let's say that you can visualize that and you can see that. And when love comes around and when compassion comes around, it starts to change not just your mind or your consciousness, it goes right into your chemistry. I'm going to make a statement right now on this planet. The highest inventions that are being worked on, that are being manifested, that are being thought of, developed, and used are quantum. There is no invention that is of 4 dimensions that is meaningful at all. Oh, there will be some. They'll be cute. But nothing like what you're working on. Now, let us back up to a channel of a few weeks ago. And I started to describe and define what you're going to discover eventually about something you think is different. And it's called consciousness. Define it in your mind. You'd say, it is the way we think. It might be identified as our vibratory rate of thinking. Oh, how 3D of you. You know what consciousness is? It's the human being's quantum engine. And it's physical. We told you it has rules of physics. That when you started to apply, and when you started to understand, and when you started to know about how to work with your own consciousness, no one else's, but your own, the moment you begin, you inform every single cell in your body to start shifting into shades of gray. It is automatic because it is expected of an old soul. There have been hints of this, dear ones. We have given you a little physics. We're going to give you a little physics again. You're dealing with basically 4 laws, what you call laws of physics. We have defined them slightly differently to make it easier for you to understand. 2 of them, we have said, are strong and weak electromagnetic force. You have relabeled those as gravity and electromagnetics. Not really. They're allied. I'm going to show you in a minute. The second 2, the strong and the weak nuclear force, what scientists take a look at the core of the atom and examine. And then the 2 missing ones, which will give you a total of 3, 4, no, 5 maybe, 6, 3 pairs, will complete it all. The strong and weak multidimensional force, when discovered, analyzed, defined, and when finally understood, will even explain what you would call dark matter. There is no such thing. It's simply invisible. Now, let's talk about a brilliant one for a moment to give you just a hint of how science starts to relate to consciousness. His name was Tesla, and he loved magnetics. I told you about him. He came for a reason and left in frustration because he could only go so far. That was all he was allowed to do. Let me tell you what he saw in his laboratory through his eyes. And I've only mentioned it once before. Dealing only with designer magnetic fields that were coarse, without computers, without the electronics kind of elegance you have today, all he could do was flounder in general areas of designer magnetics. But 3 times or more he touched on a formula that changed the mass of things on his workbench, and they flew off and hit the ceiling. The astute who examine his workshop, even the preserved archaeology of his workshop today, will see pockmarks in the ceiling. He didn't discover anti-gravity. There is no such thing. He discovered the relationship between designer magnetics and the mass of an object. You think mass is stable. You think if something is bigger, it has a higher mass. Oh, how 3D. That's all you've seen. And it gives you something called gravity, which you also don't understand. You know why? Because it's quantum. Magnetics is quantum. You play with it. That's all you do. You play with it. You don't understand it yet. Humanity is starting to work with consciousness. What did you see the good doctor do today? What did you see the teacher Greg settle on? To bring back something he said was old and give it to you again. Do you see how the dots are starting to be connected? Because both of them centered on something that is critical, and that is consciousness will change physics. And part of physics is biology. The masters gave it to you first. They begged you to watch it. And what did you do? As unelegant humans, literally in survival mode, you worshiped them. You didn't get it. You didn't understand. This could be you. And they came again and again and again. And by the way, they're coming again and again. Perhaps you'll listen this time and write it down. Consciousness is the key and is the answer to a very esoteric and quantum question. If quantum energy has no real time, if quantum energy can be projected through portions of entanglement so there's no distance, one of the questions today, how about the law of the inverse square? You know what that is? That's a three-dimensional law that quantum physics ignores. You can send a signal from here, right now, today, to the farthest part of the universe, and they'll get it instantly, because it's not part of black and white. Are you understanding this? The ones who are receiving shades of gray are starting to develop the receivers that are quantum in their brains. Do you know what spontaneous remission really is? It's the human being who has a triggering from whatever process you want to call it, through his akash, through fear, through joy, through survival, who all of a sudden, for a moment, sees in color and has the ability of the masters and heals himself in minutes.